Now I am taking the 6th chapter of your physics book, heat transfer. You know very well when a body changes its state from solid to liquid or from liquid to gas, heat is absorbed. In the same way, when a matter is changed from the gaseous to the liquid or from liquid to solid, heat is evolved, heat is given out. Now you have already learnt about vaporization, and the other name of it is boiling. Now what is vaporization? The process by which liquid changes into its gaseous state at some fixed temperature. Boiling cannot take place at any temperature. Every liquid has its fixed temperature to boil by the absorption of heat energy is known as vaporization or boiling. For example, water changes into its gaseous state, that is steam, at a fixed temperature which is 100 degrees Celsius. So boiling of a pure liquid occurs at a fixed temperature, and that temperature we call it as the boiling point. Now evaporation is also the process in which liquid changes into the gaseous state, but still there is a difference between the vaporization and evaporation, because vaporization or a liquid which is going to boil, it will always boil at the fixed temperature. Evaporation takes place at any temperature, and that too below its boiling point. So the change of a substance from its liquid state to its gaseous state at any temperature below its boiling point is called evaporation. So the simple example I can say about evaporation is that when we wash the clothes and put them outside for drying, they dry due to evaporation of water from the clothes into the atmosphere. So the molecules which are present on the surface of the liquid, they gain sufficient energy that they escape and become vapor in the case of evaporation, which are on the surface of the liquid. So the molecules which are near the surface of the liquid, they gain sufficient energy. Sufficient energy means the heat energy, and they take the heat energy from the surroundings, from the atmosphere. They will escape and become vapor. So evaporation and boiling are two different processes. Now some of the effects of evaporation, or you can say the processes which involves evaporation, are the drying of wet clothes occurs because of the evaporation of water from their surface. Water which is stored in an earthen pot seeps out on the surface of the pot through the fine pores and evaporates. And when water evaporates, this makes to lower the temperature of the water in the pot. So that is why water in the earthen pot becomes cool. Sweat absorbs heat from our body to evaporate. This helps to cool down your body during summer, because evaporation causes cooling. When water evaporates from our body, which is in the form of a sweat, and if we sit under a fan And when sweat evaporates from our body, we find that our temperature of the body is becoming lowering down, and that gives us a cooling effect. So that is why I am again telling you that evaporation and boiling, though there is a change of state from liquid to gaseous in both the cases, but still they are different from each other. Now let us read about the factors which affect evaporation. Now you must have noticed that during winters, your mother finds it difficult to dry the clothes. Why? Because the temperature during the winters is low, and the temperature in summers that is high. That is why the clothes during the summer, they dry up very soon. So what is the first factor which affects the evaporation? Temperature. And what is the relationship between evaporation and temperature? They are directly related to each other. That rate of evaporation increases with the increase in temperature. The second factor is surface area. If the surface area will be large, evaporation will be fast. If the surface area, suppose if you keep water in a shallow vessel or in a big vessel, evaporation will be easier in the shallower one. So it depends on the surface area also. So rate of evaporation increases with the increase in the surface area of the liquid. And the third factor is humidity. What is humidity? The presence of water vapors in the atmosphere. That is why during the rainy season also it is difficult to dry the clothes, because during the rainy season the humidity is very high, because already lot of water vapors are there in the atmosphere. So when humidity is high, evaporation becomes slow. So humidity and evaporation are inversely related to each other. When humidity is high, then evaporation is slow. And what is the fourth factor which affects the evaporation? Wind speed, means speed of the wind. So if the speed of the wind is high, the rate of evaporation will also increase. Rate of evaporation increases with the increase in the speed of wind. So what are the four factors which affect evaporation? Temperature of the surroundings, of the atmosphere, surface area, humidity, and wind speed. So these are the four factors which affect the evaporation. Now you have to learn the differences between evaporation and boiling, and it is very important also. As you know, evaporation occurs, I told you, there is no particular temperature for evaporation. It occurs at all temperature. But boiling occurs only at the boiling point of liquid. Evaporation is slow and silent process, but evaporation is a very brisk and violent process. Means suppose how it is brisk and violent. Suppose you keep water in a vessel and put it on your gas, which is going to give heat to this water. You will see that when water starts boiling, it produces some sound. So that is why it is called brisk and violent process. Evaporation only occurs at the surface of the liquid, because the molecules which are present on the surfaces of the liquid, they only evaporate. And boiling occurs over the entire mass of the liquid. Evaporation causes cooling. Boiling does not cause any cooling. For evaporation, heat energy is supplied by the surroundings, that is the temperature of the atmosphere, and source of heat energy is required for boiling. So water can evaporate, but water cannot boil unless you put it on a gas. But it can evaporate. If you are going to spill the water somewhere, it is going to evaporate, but it will not boil. Temperature reduces during evaporation, and here temperature remains the same. Temperature does not change, it remains same. So this is the difference between evaporation and boiling. Now we are going to read about thermal expansion. Thermal means heat. Expansion means to elongate or to expand. So all the three states of matter, solid, liquid, gas, they expand on heating. So most substances expand when they are heated. So what is the definition of thermal expansion? The expansion produced in matter due to the absorption of heat energy is called thermal expansion. Now, when you are going to provide heat to the solid, though all the three states of matter expand, but expansion is little in solid because the molecules are closely packed to each other, and lot of heat energy is required to break their intermolecular force of attraction. So that is why molecules are closely packed and are held together firmly. So solid expands a little on heating, but the molecules of liquids are loosely packed and they have got intermolecular spaces also in between. So in comparison to solids, liquids expand more than solids. But the molecules of the gases, as you know, the intermolecular force of attraction is negligible and the spaces are very large. So gases expand the most on heating. Now we are going to study about the types of thermal expansion. Now there are three types of thermal expansion. Firstly, linear expansion. The second expansion is the superficial expansion, and the third one is the cubical expansion. What does linear expansion means? Linear means increase in the length. So the increase in the length as of a rod, when the solid expands in length only. So it will be applicable to the rods which have got wire, which have got good length, but thickness is very less. So the increase in the length of the solid on heating is called linear expansion. And what are the factors on which the linear expansion depends? It depends on the original length of the solid. If the original length of the solid will be large, expansion will also be large. So a longer rod of a metal expands more than a smaller rod of the same metal. Increase in temperature. If you are going to heat the rod for a longer time, expansion will be more. When two rods of the same metal having the same length, they are heated to different temperatures, So the rod which is heated to a higher temperature will expand more than the rod which is heated to a lower temperature. So more the temperature provided to the rod, more will be the expansion. It depends on the nature of the solid also. Whether the rod is made up of brass, copper, iron, it depends on its nature also, because the expansion is different for different substances. When two rods of different metals having same length are heated and the temperature also provided the same, one rod expands more than the other, because as I told you, the expansion depends on the nature of the solid. So these are the three factors on which the linear expansion depends. Now the second expansion, as I have read earlier also, is the superficial expansion. Linear expansion was the increase in the length of a solid, and superficial expansion is the expansion in the area of a solid. In linear expansion only length was involved. Now in superficial expansion, length as well as breadth will be involved. So expansion in the area of a solid on heating is called superficial expansion. For example, the area of a plate or a sheet of metal increases on heating. Suppose you have got a rectangular sheet of metal having length and breadth. So expansion will take place in its length also as well as in its breadth also. Now the third expansion, as I told you before also, I took the name before also, is the cubical expansion. So expansion in the volume of a solid, liquid or gas on heating is called cubical expansion. So expansion in the volume, which involves length, breadth as well as height of a solid, liquid or gas, because liquid has only the volume as well as gases also has only the volume. So cubical expansion is the increase in the volume of a solid, liquid or gas on heating. Now in the next video, I am going to take up some experiments and I am going to continue with this chapter.